Today I want to talk about enormous roach, and I'm not talking about 2 pounders. I've had lots of 2 pounders, 3 pounders, I've had a couple, but I'm going to talk about 4 pounders and whether it's possible that one day there could be a 5 pound roach in the UK. If we look back over the last 100 years, maybe, the roach record has gone from 310 in the just over 100 years ago up to then 314 just before the Second World War, Bill Penny, up to 4-1 in the mid-70s, 4-3 1990, Ray Clark on the Dorset Stour, quite near where I live, and now it's at £4.4 with the Northern Irish fish. And in the last few weeks there have been claims for another fish of 4.4 by Di Gribble. That one I haven't seen the full photos, but it seems to be fine. And the real shock is a 4.13 fish caught on the fly, I believe, from a reservoir, trout reservoir, that was brought ashore, weighed on 3 sets of scales, looks completely kosher again. Again, I haven't seen the full photos, just low quality photos. Now, if you go over that sort of 100 years or whatever, from Bill Penny's roach to the present day, you've got an increase of 6 ounces on about 60 ounces. So you've got a 10% increase in that time. And what we found with other species is that the increase in that same period has been quite a bit more. With barbel, the old record before they got chucked out in 1968 was 14.6, and there were 3 of those, and one of those eventually got reinstated, Alma Tryon's fish. For a while the record was sort of 13 pounds odd, I think Joe Day, but that wasn't really the record. But it was around about 14 pounds, and it's now over 21 pounds. There are fish to around about 20 pounds in the Hampshire Avon at the moment, fish not far off that in the Dorset Stour. A good chance of fish of that calibre in the Severn and the Trent, possibly in the Wye in the future. So you've got basically a 50% increase in the size of barbel, and the barbel that a few years ago people would, a fish of a lifetime was a 10 pound barbel, and now people on the Trent, for instance, are getting multiple catches of barbel well over 10 pounds, and no one gets, fish of 14 pounds are coming out all over the place. And bream are much the same. If we go back 50 years, the bream record was just under 13 pounds. That there had been an old record over 13 pounds from the 1930s, and now that record is 22 pounds. So without doing very clever maths, 9 pounds on 13, so well over 50%, over 60%. Weirdly, the Dace record is less than it used to be. It's £1, just over £1.05. There have been lots of just over a pound fish, but historically there were ones of 1.6, 1.8 and 5 drams, and I think there was an out of season fish of 1.9 from the Dorset Froome. So it begs the question, could roach really get up to £5? Well, Dan Sales, who helped me on one of my roach books, my second roach book, Big Roach 2, sent me a picture of a 4.7 roach, which isn't much bigger than our current British record, but he reckoned he'd lost one over £5 fishing with very heavy gear, and it had come off at the net. I don't know how big a roach the Ebro has produced, but certainly quite a few 4-pounders. There was also reports of a 515 German fish. It's held by a small child, and one of the problems with a big fish held by a small child is that they're proportionally much smaller, so your sense of size with it is harder to compute. If I was to hold a roach of nearly 6 pounds, and as long as it's not out like with the big hands, the monster hands coming up now, as you can see, and this isn't a very wide angle lens, you get that distortion. I'll bring the hands back to the same line as the camera. You see the huge difference. And like I say, that's not a fisheye lens or a wide angle. If I put a really wide angle one, it would be crazy. But you can get camera distortion, and you always have to wonder with any fish report that's with scanty information, how good is that information? Has someone guessed the weight or weighed it badly by not subtracting the weight, or just say, oh, the weight weighs 4 ounces, the net that it's weighed in weighs 4 ounces when it actually weighs 1.25 pounds, or even worse. There is a possibility that we're about to see a big increase in the roach record if that fish of 413 is accepted, and I understand the next meeting of the British Record Fish Committee is in June, and we're coming up to May. We're just about into May now. We will know soon if the claim is accepted. There was a roach of 4.5 that always looked kosher to me, caught by a guy called Mike Brown, and its problem was the mouth on it was damaged, and the Record Fish Committee weren't 100% convinced that it was a true roach, because they couldn't really tell. The whole mouth was sort of bent round and damaged long ago. Apart from that, there was nothing wrong with the roach. There's a chance that as roach, people talk about global warming, we're definitely getting warmer weather overall in the UK, and the warmer it is through the whole year, so especially in the winter, the more chance that fish can put on weight for longer each year, rather than having a lean time in the winter. We've seen this with the barbel, we've seen this with the bream. The tench record is 15 pounds, and that was sort of 9 pounds back in the 70s. And even waters that I've fished over the years have produced them around 12 and 13 pounds, waters around Ringwood. Fish that 50 years ago, if you'd said that those waters would produce tench like that, you'd just laughed. Carp the same, much bigger than they were before. And there are waters that could produce these enormous roach, well over 4.5 pounds, potentially a 5-pounders, but they're waters that aren't being fished for roach. So the waters that could do it are small but rich carp waters that are protected from predators such as otters, but lots of feed going in, lots of very rich pellets and boilies, or big trout reservoirs like Chew or Graffham or Rutland Water. But no one's roach fishing Rutland or Graffham or Chew, and they're capable of producing very big fish. So there's the conundrum. Could it happen? Maybe. Like I say, we're waiting with bated breath on whether that 413 roach is accepted, that the weight is accurate, and that the committee is satisfied that it's a true roach. It's a shame in a way that I don't know whether anyone took a scale for DNA testing. It would have been good if they have. Quite how it would get tested at the moment, I don't know, but it can always be done. And that would prove beyond pretty much all doubt that it is a true roach. Hope I've got you thinking. As ever, do you think we could get a £5 roach? Do you think this one's going to make it? I hope so, in a way, because it's you have to dream. £4 roach have come out of my local Dorset Froome, the bit of river I've fished for decades. I don't fish it more than the odd time nowadays. A £4 was reported at the end of the last season. It's a big old fish. It doesn't look quite right to me, but what that means, I don't know. I can't prove anything. The picture isn't good enough to show what it might be, and I'm not going to tell you what I think it might be. But again, somewhere that 40 years ago, £2 roach, it was possible to catch more than a few, but they went to about just over £3. And then in the last decade or so, people started to get them well over £3. And then finally, Alan Story got one of £4 too, that definitely was a roach. Is that fish still around 2 years later? Starting to get towards the end of its lifespan, but you never know. The Dorset Stour seems incapable of producing anything of that sort of nature. So there's still £2 in there, if I could but find them. Hampshire Avon, there's a chance that some of the lower Avon could produce one way over £3. It's nearly produced £4 up at Ibsley quite a few years ago. Never quite made it. Something to think about. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.